All right, welcome everyone to Planetary Workshops. We're very excited to have you guys here today. This is our second workshop, and we're just kind of letting everybody come in from the waiting room, give everybody a minute so they can connect with their audio. So I hope everybody's having a wonderful day, and we're excited to have you. And we're here for the workshop, The Future of Intelligence, Technology in the Age of Intuition with Dada Nabhaniilananda and his guests. So I'm going to share my screen and just go a little bit over what we're going to talk about today, mostly just kind of a schedule overview and kind of check in with everybody. So let me get to a full screen. All right, so we're here for the Planetary Workshop. We'll have about 5 minutes of a welcome, and then we'll have some live chanting and guided meditation with Dada. And then we'll have a really exciting presentation, followed by a group activity, a sharing moment, a closing, and then some announcements. Here at PLT, we are an inclusive program. So we want to welcome everyone. We are open to the public, and everyone's at different levels. Some people here have been longtime meditators. Some are just starting, or they're just finding interest and they're here to enjoy something, new workshop. So we just ask everybody to make everyone feel welcome. And I think this quote puts it well. It is our duty to accelerate the speed of human progress. Your endless efforts to broaden and smoothen the path of human movement will render our present existence and your future history inestimable. Shri Shri Andramurti. So yes, and like I said, we're really excited you guys are all here, and we're all from all over the globe. And that's if you could join me on the menti.com for a minute. And I believe that Ishita put the link in the chat. And the code is 8858-8685. And if you would, tell us where you are right now in the world, because we are a global community, people from all over the world. I know we have people in South America, United States. We have people in Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia. So just want to see where everybody's at. I'm out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean in Hawaii. It's great.
That's not fair. You don't get a dot in Hawaii.
I know. We were talking about getting a new map. Yes. Fantastic. Always our goal is to have more and more of these blue dots all over the globe as our community grows. So we welcome
Oh, we've
everyone
got
here.
Vietnam there.
Yeah. Oh, and I didn't meant to, if anybody here does need translation, we do have it in Spanish with Devesh and Vietnamese with Subodh. So please, if you need to, and if you're having any troubles, please let us know in the chat. Great. Thank you guys for participating. And just a brief overview of PLT. We are about 1.5 years old now, and we just want to let you guys know kind of where we're going with our programs and how, as planetary leaders, we're trying to develop people to transform your world. So we have a 5-step program that we've created, and the first is to establish a personal routine, which is PLT weekly events. We have planetary meditation and planetary yoga, all in our events calendar. 2 is develop a foundational understanding, which you can get within on our community. We have a great extensive video library that's ever growing with different courses that are all at your disposal that you can watch on your own time. And then things like this workshop, engage in an active community. We have these workshops every Sunday, and we have an online platform that we have that you can interact on a daily basis that we hope to see more of you guys on. And then 4th thing is we're going to start developing feature programs, and that's to enhance your skills and your knowledge. And 5th is becoming a planetary leader via PLT team volunteering and also social projects. So really excited to share this learning path with everyone, and we hope that you guys join us for this journey. And I did talk real quickly, briefly. We do have a global community online platform. And some of you guys have joined us there, and we hope to see more of you. We have daily interactions with different polls and questions, and it's a way to share our experiences, learn from each other, and grow as a community on a global scale. So again, we hope to see more of you guys there, more active, and it's completely open, it's free, and everyone is welcome. So on that note, I am going to pass it on to Dada Nabhaniilananda, and he's going to play some live Kiirtan with us, which is chanting meditation with Baba Nam Kevalam. And he's going to follow us with a short guided meditation, and then we'll have the presentation. So I'm going to send it to you, Dada. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, we're going to have a very short meditation. I'm going to sing this mantra, Baba Nam Kevalam. Many of you are familiar with this, but perhaps not all of you. And it means only the feeling of limitless love. So you can just sit straight and close your eyes, and my friend here is going to accompany me. I think you've all probably got your microphones off by default, which is good because I love singing with people, but over the internet it doesn't work. So you're welcome to sing, but keep your mics off, please. And yeah, just sit straight and close your eyes, and we're just going to have a very short chanting and then silent meditation. Baba Nam Kevalam, Baba Nam Kevalam, Baba Nam Keep your eyes closed. Sit straight and breathe through your nose if you can comfortably. And let the mantra Baba Nam Kevalam continue in your mind with the music. And just focus on the idea behind that, this feeling of limitless love, and connect to the source of love within you. We'll meditate on that silently for just a couple of minutes. Just take a deep breath. And you breathe out and relax, and you can open your eyes. So this morning, well, it's morning for me. I'm in California, and I know some of you are in different parts of the world, so it may not be morning. But this morning for me, I'm going to be talking about this subject of the future of intelligence. And this is the first of a 4-part series. And this morning we'll be focusing on what's happening in technology. So it's really about technology and what I call the age of intuition. And I'll explain a bit about what I mean by that in a few moments. So I want to start with a short presentation just to kind of bring some of you up to speed on what's happening in some areas of advanced technology. And I have a special guest today who I'll be introducing to you just after the presentation. And we'll be talking about this and getting his insights on this. So I'm going to start the presentation, and yeah, this is going to work. Okay, the future of intelligence. So I first gave a version of this presentation about 4 years ago, and I live in Silicon Valley, just near all these tech companies, Google and Apple and all of these. So I teach sometimes at these companies, so I get to hear a lot of the latest things that are happening, and I don't understand all of it. I'm not a technology professional, but I hear a lot of things, very interesting things. So the thing that struck me is how this has changed just in the 4 years since I first presented on this topic. It's kind of like back then, the things I was talking about as ideas, now they're real. And this is one of the themes of today, is how quickly this is moving and why. And it's to do with the difference between digital intelligence and organic intelligence, which we are blessed with. And I'm glad we are. I like having this. So I'm going to show you a little video. It's a 4-minute, slightly less than 4 minutes, and it's just a snapshot of some of the areas where technology, advanced technology, is being applied and is already impacting society, or beginning to, and is bound to do even more so in the future. So here's this little video presentation, and away we go.
This house was 3D printed in a week, partly from waste, including material from old, demolished buildings. And this is the world's first 3D printed community. 2 houses have already been printed, with 50 planned in total. They will be available to people living on less than $3 a day in a bid to fight homelessness. This is Wallenhausen, the largest 3D printed building in Europe, with 5 apartments over 3 levels. The printer that made this structure can be operated with just 2 people. It can print at up to 1 meter per second. The printer that created Wallenhausen, and others like it, print in concrete. In fact, the rockets that will carry the printers may also be printed.
This is the first large part that we made, which was a fuel tank. Normally, getting a tank of this size in like aerospace or rocket quality would take you well over 12 months.
How long did it take you to make this?
It's like 7 days of print time.
But perhaps the most profound frontier is the printing of human body parts, from ears and arteries to whole organs. Ceramic ink is being used to print bones, with plans to print directly into patients during surgery. And this was printed using living cells. It mimics lungs, including blood flow. And printed organs could save the thousands of people who die waiting for an organ transplant. They do face many challenges. How to keep the tissue alive and healthy when it's not in a body. How to get it to hold its shape against gravity. And how to get it to function as a whole organ. Like in the case of the heart, how to get it to beat. If human organs become cheap to mass produce, do you think we'll use them to renew our bodies and extend our lives? There's a reason why Boston Dynamics robots dance. It's not just to demonstrate their impressive abilities, which are a huge leap forward from earlier robots. And it's about more than racking up millions of views on YouTube. Robotic workforces have helped make Musk and Bezos the richest men in the world, while also taking over jobs that used to be done by humans. Could tools like artificial intelligence make 1 billion human jobs obsolete by 2030, as one report warns? Or will they work alongside us? Musk recently made a stark prediction that AI will become vastly more intelligent than humans within the next 5 years. Is that possible? You're watching Digital Engine. All in all, it takes just 3 days to make a Model 3. And these manufacturing robots are pretty much building a vast fleet of more robots, as each car now has the capacity to fully self-drive in most situations. So if we include the cars, Musk may well beat Bezos to 1 million robots. With plans for Teslas to act as self-driving taxis, there will be around 1 million more of these self-driving robots over the next year, with a target of 20 million produced per year by 2030. It's predicted that self-driving vehicles could replace some of the most common jobs in many US states. And Amazon's robots are replacing the #1 job in the US, retail sales. As the robots increase Amazon's output while decreasing its costs, the company is rapidly pushing other retailers out of the market altogether.
So this kind of technology is already disrupting multiple industries and fields of commerce and human activity. Science fiction speculates about what happens when machines become self-aware. I personally think that's a fantasy. But some of the science fiction stories you may have seen in film, this one at the top is from AI, which is actually a very touching and charming story about a little boy who is actually a robot and becomes self-aware. Terminator is less charming, and the dystopian future, the evil AI that takes over the world and tries to destroy humanity. We speculate about what might happen as machines become more and more intelligent, and in this case self-aware. As I said, I don't really believe that's going to happen, but certainly they're getting smarter, and this is going to affect us. According to a United Nations report, this is actually from 4 years ago, robots will replace 2/3 of all workers in the developing world. As an example, well, China's not really a developing world anymore, but iPhones. Many people have iPhones. 2 million people are employed manufacturing iPhones by Foxconn, not by Apple. It's outsourced. Now Foxconn is buying tens of thousands of robots that are going to replace those human workers. Stephen Hawking, when he was alive, very accurately, I think, anticipated that automation and artificial intelligence are going to decimate middle-class jobs. So these are kind of white-collar jobs in investment, banking, analysis of medical information. That we didn't imagine that machines are going to be taking over. These are already being usurped by artificial intelligence. So what do? You might remember this, another science fiction fantasy of human beings don't need to work and become blobs who lead effectively meaningless lives watching junk television and eating junk food. So I hope that's not going to happen. I don't think it will, but we fantasize. Or hopefully we'll do something better with our minds. We'll be freed from doing the things we don't like doing and do things that are more creative, complex, and hopefully spiritual in the future. And this is Elon Musk's comment about that. By the way, I have mixed feelings about Elon Musk. I think he's an extraordinary genius in some fields. In other fields, I think he doesn't know what he's talking about, in the fields of social justice and labour unions, for example. Anyway, so in reviewing this topic after 4 years, I realized that this is complex. So rather than doing one workshop on this, I'm going to do 4. This is part 1, where I'll be speaking with Dr. Patrick Bangert, who I'm going to introduce in a minute, whom I'm not going to call him Dr. Patrick Bangert because he's my very good friend, so I'm going to call him Patrick, but you have to call him Dr. Bangert because he's a very important man. Okay. Future Humans, that's part 2, that I'll probably do in a month's time, and I have another special guest coming there, and we'll be talking about what we might do with our time as if we're freed up from mundane or boring work. And maybe we will in some ways merge and become kind of what they call centaurs, which are part human. Centaur is a horse with a human top half of their body from the Greek mythology, I think. So that's, I'm not saying we're literally going to become like that necessarily, but right now my memory is outsourced to my phone, or at least all the phone numbers are. So we're already using, or sort of somehow outsourcing some of our mental functions to everyday computers. Future economics is the next topic, which will be a month after that. I think we're creating more wealth with less work. What do we do about that? What about the massive unemployment? How do we think about new ways of distributing wealth? And then there's a whole a tidal wave of this baby boomer bubble, not just in the Western nations, in China especially. In 20 years' time, there's going to be a huge population over 60, and a much smaller population working to support them. How's that going to play out? And the last part of this will be on intuitional science. I call it a technology for conscious evolution, and how can we use the wisdom of the past, what we've learned over the thousands of years of being human, and particularly the power of spiritual meditation. So that's the kind of overview of what's coming, and this is what today there's two things I want you to understand before I speak with my guest. One is why this is moving so quickly. Why in the last 4 years, since I've been watching this fairly closely, has it moved so rapidly? And that is to do with the exponential growth or increase in the power of computing. And this is related to Moore's law. Douglas Moore was one of the founders of Intel, and he anticipated back in the 1970s, or maybe even earlier, that the number of transistors incorporated in a chip, a computer chip, would approximately double every 24 months. It's actually faster than that now. And this is doubling is what's known as exponential growth. It's the difference between an arithmetic progression and a logarithmic progression. And I want to demonstrate that. If you had a piece of paper, we're not going to have time to do this physically now, but if you had a piece of paper, you know, a standard piece of photocopying paper you might put in a machine, and you folded it, so it's the size, the thickness of it is doubled. And then you folded it again, and then you folded it again, and each time it becomes thicker. How many times would you have to fold it before your folded paper became thick enough to reach the moon? Okay, that's the first question. And I want you to type in the chat your guess. How many times do you think you would have to fold one sheet of paper? No cheating, no checking on Google. That's not allowed. How many times would you have to fold it before it reaches the moon? And I'm going to see your guesses. 7, okay, and 175. Oh, we've got a wide variation here. Okay, 17,000. Oh, even wider. Thanks. Hi, Lolita. Lolita's in Bali, my friend there. And some more numbers. Guesses at how many times you would need to fold your piece. 101. That's very precise. Thank you. A few more guesses. 64. Okay. I should have thought of a little prize that I would give the closest guess. So far, well, keep going. Let's get a few more. Luckily, it's not 17,000. That would be very difficult. Let's have a few more. Millions. Okay. Okay, well, the correct answer, 162 billions. Oh, wow. You guessed twice. That's cheating. 152. The correct answer is 42. And if you're a Douglas Adams reader, that is coincidental. Okay, now, of course, it's not possible to actually do this physically. It's only possible to fold an 80-gram piece of paper 7 times before it becomes too physically difficult to fold it again. But if you could keep folding it, yes, it would be 42 times. Now, the moon is only 250,000 miles away. The sun is 92 million miles away. So it's 380 times or 60 times roughly the distance. But how many more times would you have to fold it? After you folded it 42 times, how many more times would you have to double the thickness to reach the sun? I want your guesses. 4, 6. You guys are getting smart now. You're fast learners. Okay, 32, 44, 8 more, 32. Okay, the correct answer is roughly 7. So, is that right? Hang on a second. 42, 47. It was either 47 or 49. It's a handful. Okay. That is an example of exponential or logarithmic progression. All right? Let me just go back a second. So I want you to understand that the rate at which computing power is increasing is like this. Every year or two that passes, it doubles. And not just computing power, but memory storage, and those are the two key things. And we haven't even started talking about quantum computing, which doesn't quite really function yet, I think. NSA is not telling us. All right. The other concept I want you to understand a little bit is intuition and what I understand by it. And the obligatory Albert Einstein quote, which I think he actually said, I'm not quite sure. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. So when I talk about the age of intuition, I think we are and need to move into an age where we develop our intuition, not just our intellect. Dilbert has some insight on this. I wonder if I should rely more on my intuition to make decisions. Do you mean guessing? No, guessing is totally different from intuition because of the these things make sense in my head. Is there room in there for all of that intuition? One thing that is sometimes clear is that analytical thinking, logic alone, can be limited. The calculating cat. Oh dear, sorry. Yeah, that was kind of mean to the cat, but I couldn't help laughing about that one. Intuition includes things like imagination and being able to envisage, take intuitive leaps, as you would say. This is actually a part of Einstein's process. He talks about it a lot. Suhail Inayatullah is actually my next guest next month, and he's a futurist. That's his specialty. He works with the United Nations. To be able to change the future, you must be able to imagine a different future. And that's not a purely logical process. We need to go beyond logic in order to be able to envisage what could happen. And this is something I believe machines can't do. And we'll be exploring the power of intuition, what we can become as we evolve ourselves consciously through practices like meditation. But this week we're going to be looking at two questions with the help of my friend. What is artificial intelligence? What is it good at? What could it become really good at? And what are we good at that differentiates us from artificial intelligence? So I'm going to jump out of this presentation now, escape from that, stop sharing, and introduce you to my friend. Can you spotlight both of us, Christian Prema? Thank you. Wonderful. Welcome, Patrick. This is Dr. Patrick Bangert. We met one another in London. Was it 24 years ago?
It was in 1995, however many years ago that is.
And you were a young man then. He was a student at the UCL, University College of London, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yeah, kind of star student. And I'm going to embarrass you by, a few accolades. He was the sort of superstar in the physics department, I believe. When I taught Patrick meditation back then, I told him, you got to meditate twice a day. He came back the next week and said, Dada, I've got a problem. I hope I remember this correctly. He said, I've actually been meditating twice a day since I was 12, and now I'm not sure what to do because that was a different meditation. So I'm meditating 4 times a day. Is that okay? And I thought, okay, this is my favorite kind of student. So he has evolved from there and got his PhD there in. I get you mixed up. Was your undergrad was in physics and your PhD's in mathematics? Is that right?
That's right.
And then you went on to do another master's in Tibetan Buddhist philosophy.
I did.
So, Patrick is also a very serious meditator who has experience both in the Ananda practice that I teach and also in Tibetan Buddhism. And but now is holding a position at Samsung as the Vice President of Artificial Intelligence. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I have 4 questions for you, I think. The first is, what is artificial intelligence? Can you translate that into lay terms for the rest of us?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you very much for having me here. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, and certainly to talk in public. Happy Sunday to everybody else. So what's artificial intelligence? Let me first of all say that the kind of artificial intelligence portrayed in Hollywood movies has essentially nothing at all to do with real artificial intelligence, the way departments like mine at Samsung or at other Silicon Valley companies actually make these artificial intelligence models. If you can think back a long, long ago when you were in high school, maybe taking a physics class or a chemistry class, you were told about equations, where you might have had to calculate how far a stone will go if you throw it at a certain angle with a certain force of your hand, right? Things like that. And there are Newton's laws of gravitation, which allow you to calculate this based on the force and the acceleration of that stone that you've thrown. That is a model. So keep in mind the word model. Model is an equation that allows you to calculate something in terms of something else. You know how big the stone was, you know how forceful you threw it. Those are the quantities you know. And how far it goes, that's the quantity you want to calculate. And there's a formula, Newton's laws of motion, that will allow you to make that determination without having to actually do the throwing and then measure the distance. That's a model, okay? Now, how was that model arrived at? It was arrived at with a very laborious process of many people, in fact, quite a lot of people making empirical observations about how objects that are heavy move, in fact, planets. So there were astronomers who measured the way that planets move in the solar system and recorded that, and it took them 10 to 15 years to make all the recording. And then it took a few mathematicians another 10 years or so to come up with Kepler's laws of motion that give the planets. And then Newton spent another decade-ish working on that to come up with his laws of motion. So it took a long time of human intelligence to make a formula that nowadays high school students learn and have to be tortured with their homework about. So that is the process of arriving at the model, the equation, with human intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence is the exact same thing in spirit. We try to get a model, an equation, and we try to shortcut the human process, the human intelligence labor of having to acquire all of the recordings and go through the process of understanding to get to the model. We simply want the model quickly. And so we have invented a methodology that basically does it in 2 steps. First, we, the humans, this part is human intelligence, we give a template of an equation, which is a very, very long template that has placeholders for coefficients in that formula. And then the artificial intelligence, this so-called algorithm, right? This is the methodology.
Hang on, let me interrupt for a second. What's a coefficient?
But sorry.
Think human.
A coefficient is a number that you multiply a variable with.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like the mass of the stone that you multiply by the acceleration that you implied on. So this template then gets filled out with the coefficients that we calculate from empirical observation. So essentially, the difference is prior to artificial intelligence, we did this work by human. It took a very long time. It took extremely intelligent, genius level people to do that, which of course are very rare. And nowadays, we do the same thing with a machine, a computer. And the primary elements that allow us to do that are three. First of all, there is some innovation in mathematics that gives you this algorithm. The algorithm is the methodology to do the calculation. The second is a very much increased amount of empirical data that is available to us. All sorts of things have been weighed and measured, and these numbers have been recorded into Excel spreadsheets and databases and other places, and we have this data. And the third is what the video earlier in the presentation illustrated so well with Moore's law. Access to computing capacity has vastly increased. So in fact, all the artificial intelligence methodologies that we use today, give or take a little improvements, have been available in the 1950s, 1960s. We just were unable to actually utilize that because of the other two factors. We didn't have enough data and we didn't have enough computing capacity.
Oh, wow.
Nowadays, we do have access to both of them. And so we are able to actually carry it out. So artificial intelligence, to put it in a nutshell, is a way to obtain a mathematical model for some physical situation in an automated way.
Cool. So it's kind of amplifying the power of our thinking.
It's taking the manual labor out of your thinking.
Okay. That sounds, I mean, setting it up sounds hard, but then it does the work for you.
Right.
And the data, I want to just come back to the data, which I call data, point again. And how come you're not speaking, you're a European, why are you speaking American English? Take the Tesla cars. So they're developing automated self-driving, or full self-driving, as they call it, FSD. And to be able to do that, they need lots of data. But because all the cars that they manufacture are constantly communicating with the sort of home brain of Tesla, they are collecting millions of hours of driving data all the time, which is being used to train the artificial intelligence so that it's got literally, I don't know how the number, I guess billions of seconds of driving scenarios so that it can learn how to drive in innumerable situations. Is that sort of what's happening?
That's exactly what's happening. And so the Tesla car is, if you will, the analogy is like a Borg from Star Trek, right? Every Tesla car is like one of the Borg driving around, shares with the collective hive mind back home at the data center its own experiences. And then the collective intelligence learns from all of the Tesla cars that are driving around, and therefore can acquire much more data. I talk American because I went to an American high school.
I know.
The difference to note here, though, the important difference is that people like you and me learn driving in maybe 10 or 15 hours of practice with the teacher, and then we can drive just fine. The computer needs literally hundreds of thousands of hours of driving experience until it is able to drive at comparatively reasonably well to us after 10 hours or so. So you note the staggering difference in amount of data that human intelligence needs to figure this out, and artificial intelligence.
So in some ways we're much smarter than the artificial intelligence,
Very much so.
But it's much bigger in the sense of it has much more computing power. So it can take vast amounts of raw data that we couldn't cope with and use it to its advantage. Kind of.
And you can copy it. You see, once I've learned how to drive, I can drive one car at a time. That's it. But once the artificial intelligence has figured out how to drive, it can drive in arbitrarily many cars.
Right.
At the same time.
Interesting. So yeah, so I'm beginning to get the difference. So they're very different types of intelligence in a way, aren't they?
Absolutely, yes.
So what would you say we can do that machine intelligence? No, hang on. Let's first look at what do you think AI might be capable of that we might not expect, regular people who don't really understand it very deeply, that we might not expect in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I mean, the use case that everybody talks about is, in fact, autonomous vehicles. So the Tesla car driving itself, that's the big one that will be accessible to the consumer, to all of us on call today. We will see it physically with the cars driving without drivers. So that's really the big thing. But there are many, many others that are invisible to us. So we are already encountering artificial intelligence every day. If you go to Netflix, it tells you what to watch. That's AI. You go to Amazon, it tells you what to buy. That's AI. You go to buy a plane ticket. The price has been calculated with an AI machine. So these very simple daily interactions are AI. What will also happen in the next 5 to 10 years, if you're thinking near-term future, is you will go to the hospital with pain somewhere in your body, and the first point of diagnosis will not be your primary care physician. It'll be an AI system that will take a snapshot of you with some medical imaging device and will diagnose you with whatever you've got. And then the physical doctor, the human, will then essentially be a second opinion and a prescriber of medication. That is a technology that's being heavily developed right now across the world, including my own department is helping in that effort, and that will be accessible not too distant future.
Cool. I don't want to get into discussing military applications of this because it's too dark for a Sunday morning.
I avoided that topic as well. There are applications, obviously, in the operation of drones and such, but yeah, that's not nice.
Not nice at all. I just wanted to say there's a bright note on that, is that there is a very powerful international effort to limit the use of automated artificial intelligence in weaponry. In the same way that there are international treaties placing limits on space-based weapons, nuclear, chemical weapons, biological weapons, landmines, etc. So there is a very active response to this kind of real threat. So just want to touch on it,
Yeah, absolutely. No, and that's of course a very great and noble thing. The only thing to watch out in that regard, again, from the individual's point of view, to launch a satellite and put it in orbit requires a very large budget. If you have a government treaty, that's fine. Artificial intelligence, though, is a piece of computer code that somebody with a sufficiently okay education can write at home using a laptop.
Yeah.
And a drone is a very inexpensive, a very small piece of machinery that any one of us could acquire as a hobby without any real challenges.
Yeah. So someone's raising a question about this. Thanks. So we do not talk about not very nice things that maybe AI could do. Well, no, I'm not afraid to talk about these, but I don't want to talk about it while we're just introducing this topic. It is actually something I want to address in some of the future sessions that we're planning. But it's a big rabbit hole that we could go down. But I want to acknowledge it as a real threat, and we will explore it later in the series. Yeah, no, thanks for the question. That's cool. We're getting some neat comments here. In a moment, we're going to go over to questions from the audience, and we've got some already, but I just want to ask you one other question, and that is about human intelligence. Because in your life, you've explored this very deeply as well, through meditation particularly, and, very deep spiritual practices and philosophy. So what do we have? What makes us different and special that you don't anticipate artificial intelligence ever being able to do? Perhaps. Ever's a big word, but imaginable.
I mean, this is where the word intuition that's in the title of this event comes in. I think that's what we have that computers don't have. Again, computers require a very large number of examples before they can figure out what it is, right? Another example, you take a small child outdoors, you point at a tree, you say tree, the child will figure out roughly what you meant with that single example. And will henceforth be able to call objects that are, roughly speaking, trees by that word tree, right? There might be a little kerfuffle around a bush, but the child will figure it out using one example, or maybe two or three. Until the computer figures it out, there's a challenge called ImageNet. The ImageNet database is a database of millions of different kinds of objects, and there's an outstanding challenge among computer vision professionals to develop AI to correctly recognize categories. It's very, very challenging, requiring, again, these millions of examples and very large number of computing hours to figure that out to an accuracy that is comparable to a child. We have an intuition that allows us to abstract from the example. Somehow, and don't ask me how, somehow when I point to the tree and I say, this is the tree, the child is able to extrapolate to an abstract concept of what that thing might be and how it is similar or dissimilar from other things. It's obviously different from my potted plant in various ways. It is different from my cat, but the lemon tree and the orange tree, even though they look different and the fruits are of different color, they are both trees. And that makes perfect sense to a 3-year-old, 4-year-old child, and it makes no sense at all to a computer.
So we sort of have this power of intuitive labeling, kind of.
Yes, we can somehow abstract from the particular example to the general abstract concept in an instant. Essentially, given 1 or 2 or 3 examples, we can make that cognitive leap from the particular to the general. And we can represent that general concept in our mind. And I'm careful not to say brain, because I do think that there is more to the mind than the brain, but we are able to represent that abstract concept in some fashion that the computer is not.
And for us, that's the basis of language.
Yes, that is the other miracle, is that somehow, again, unknown, your abstract concept of tree, after that's been pointed at in your childhood, and my abstract concept of tree, when it's been pointed out in my childhood, are inexplicably very similar.
Amazing.
And that allows us to talk about these things.
And not just trees, but things like emotions and invisible things, abstract ideas.
Yes. And I didn't come to talk about that because that's, of course, way beyond the understanding of a computer, right? Try to teach a computer what is love. Yeah, that's a lost cause.
Glad I'm kind of, well, love is good, but I'm actually reassured. Honestly, I'm reassured when you describe the limitations of artificial intelligence, because I'm a little afraid of it.
Yeah, I do feel that there is a lot of fear out there. And so one of the things that I definitely do want to get across is this vision of the Terminator, complete and utter fiction. We are not close to that. In fact, we are so not close, we have no idea whatsoever how to even make it if we wanted to. Based on where we are at today with artificial intelligence, we can barely tell the tree from the bush. So don't worry about the Terminator.
Thank you. I mean, that is reassuring. Well, it was as I said, I don't think the Terminator, the self-aware, AI is possible, but autonomous is a different thing. And actually, just what's your comment on the very recent announcement at Tesla of their humanoid robot?
I think it's a pipe dream, to be honest.
I love it.
It's a nice dream, but what they call artificial general intelligence, in other words, an artificial intelligence that's intelligent compared to a human being, it's a dream. It's restricted to science fiction novels. There are a few people, very, very few people, you could put them in a room, that do research on this topic. But it is not very serious, impractical.
Great. Let's go to questions. And we've got a few here written. And so I encourage you to add your questions to the chat. I think that's the most efficient way to do that. So do you, this is a very ambitious one. Do you suppose that AI can ever become God aware?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, that was easy. Even that's a step beyond a huge step beyond self-aware. So I think you answered that already. Now let's go back. These are kind of comments and questions. I just want to get your response to them if you think it's useful. Let me just go back to these. Give me a second. Oh, I like this one from Pratik. Thank you. AI is like a donkey for our minds.
Yeah, that's very true.
Okay, I like it. So it helps us to do boring work and hard work.
Yeah. In fact, there's been a novel a few years ago called Origin by Dan Brown. That
yes.
It's an entertaining book. Never mind about the quality of the novel. Yep. But the idea that's being explored here is that humanity is effectively a dying species because it currently in development in birth is a new species, which is a hybrid of human and a digital device, which gives the human superpowers, right? I have the power to instantly be in different places via, for example, Zoom. My knowledge base is infinitely enhanced by, for example, Google. Things like that, right? I have abilities now in my new centaur self with this enhancement that I never had before in the history of humankind. And that's effectively a new species in Dan Brown's mind. And I have to say that I agree with him. I rely so much on this thing that, like you, Dada, I've outsourced my memory to the device. I don't know where I'm supposed to be and who I'm supposed to meet. I look it up in my calendar.
Yeah. We're already centaurs, right?
That's right.
I love that, Matt. I love the centaur metaphor. It's been beautifully explored in a very funny science fiction story called After On, a novel about Silicon Valley, and it's about a startup which ends up creating a self-aware supercomputer using quantum computing. And of course it's fantasy, but it's so much fun. And it has a happy ending. So a lot of these sort of fantasies are very dystopian. And I think there's a problem with dystopian fantasy, it's a slight aside, and that is it can be self-fulfilling. Because if everyone thinks the world is going to become a bad place, that will tend to happen because we are the ones who are effectively deciding that. So I'm a great believer in positive thinking because it tends to affect outcomes. Anyway.
Excuse me, Dada. Shiva raised his hand.
Please, Shiva.
Yes, I just wondered, Patrick, sorry, Doctor, what was?
I was teasing you. What do you like people to call you?
Patrick, it's fine.
I was wondering if you can comment on really how ubiquitous artificial intelligence is. It's not just this science fiction type of thing. I mean, for example, I'm a software engineer and we're using OCR, which is optical character recognition, to examine emails coming in. And I work at a boring insurance company and we're using AI there to do straight through processing. I mean, we want to issue policies without an underwriter having to touch it much. So I'm working on this app called Human in the Loop. And that just is very telling right there that the humans are just playing this. They're like the exception of the rule, like the amount of manual intervention, if you will. So it seems like a lot of this AI is a matter of automating the process, which is more efficient. And I wonder if you can comment on the ubiquity of that, as well as what the future that may mean in terms of jobs. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Shiva. That's a very good question, very important thing to say. AI is in fact very ubiquitous, and all of us meet AI several times a day, even if you don't want. And in fact, it's my belief that the only economic relevance of AI is automation. Everything else is kind of a university researcher's dream, which may come in the future at some point, but automation is where the value really lies. Driving that Tesla car is automation. Analyzing your emails with OCR is automation. In many, many processes, the effect that AI will have on the workforce, like we saw in the presentation earlier on, eliminating certain jobs, that will be by virtue of automation, not by virtue of intelligence, in the sense that it will replace the idea creating, creative thinking process of humans. No way. It will replace manual labor. It will replace repetitive tasks that are in some sense easy and very, very restricted. OCR, for example, optical character recognition, the transcription of handwriting to a digital text, that's a very, very restricted, very well-defined task, right? A computer is great for that. But go ask the computer what the handwriting individual meant by what he wrote, and that's suddenly out of scope, right? So absolutely, AI is ubiquitous even today. We meet it all the time, and its value lies in automation. So if your job is a repetitive job, requires relatively little training, or if it is in manual labor, then you might think that robot or an artificial intelligence software tool might try to replace you in some way. There are, of course, many kind of rare situations that occur all the time with manual labor that, because artificial intelligence reproduces itself from data, will not be able to cover. So you will always need some people around to cover the rare case, the dangerous case, the case that didn't get learned properly, or in case the robot makes an error. But 95% of all manual labor cases will at some point be covered by AI.
And also sort of intellectual / manual labor. I think that's what Shiva is talking about. It's not just like what we think of as building something with our hands, also the sort of repetitive intellectual work.
Right. I mean, for example, there's now an AI that will automatically design a PowerPoint presentation for you based on a little input. And it looks good, I have to admit it. And so do I need to hire a graphic designer to paint my PowerPoints for me anymore? The delta in beauty between the AI designed PowerPoint and the human designed PowerPoint may or may not, I'll leave it up to you, and be enough for the financial investment delta.
We've got a ton of great comments and questions, and I have a difficult decision here because we're supposed to go to breakout rooms now for 15 minutes, but I'm actually on the point of saying let's use that time for questions. Instead, I have the thumbs up from our host. Okay, thank you, Krishna Prema. You helped me make my decision. So we're going to extend question time and sacrifice the breakout rooms. Sorry, but which is, I mean, it's nice. There's 54 of us here. Would be nice to have a chance to interact one-to-one or in small groups, but I just think this opportunity to tap Patrick's brain is really kind of precious, and let's do more of that. So I'm going to look at some of the written questions and comments here and just pick a couple. I don't think we have time for all of them. Let me go back to, okay, Nimesh. Oh, thanks, Nimesh. I just met Nimesh yesterday. Thinking Moore's law is improving machines' computation and cognitive power. How is AI development and the human interactions with AI machines transforming the development of our own brains from the neuro and brain development point and creating new neural pathways? Or he's just curious about how our interaction with AI might be affecting us, I think is the essence of the question.
Okay. I guess I need to differentiate then between those of us who are in the business of making AI, which of course are few, and it affects us in the sense that we have to creatively think about how the AI is doing its thinking and somehow improve it, right? Because we are the teachers in the school where AI is the student. So we have to think very mathematically, very creatively about how to get the right things lining up. But for everybody who is not in the business of making AI, you are the users or the victims of AI. You have to kind of think the other way around, essentially about how to make AI more useful to you personally, or in some senses about how to outsmart it. So I'll give a very simple example. There is AI behind the pricing of quite a few goods and services. The plane ticket being the most ready example, right? So if you ask to fly to a popular business destination on a Monday and return on a Friday, the AI will assume you're a business traveler and will give you a high price. If you return on the Sunday instead, it will assume that you're a tourist, and the price delta in the plane ticket might be enough to fund your hotel, right? So you have to outthink the way the AI will make its assumptions to get benefit for you personally. The other way around, from automation point of view, you have to assume AI will try to automate away many of your daily activities. Is that a threat to you or not, is something you will have to creatively think about. And if it is a threat, you might have to adapt yourself to that by becoming somebody who does things that are not so repetitive and not so automatable.
Right.
So you will have to learn new skills. You might have to go back to school and learn something different. Or if you're thinking about going to school or trade school or internships or whatnot, take the right ones that allow you to have skills and career paths that are not going to be automated away. So I think, yes, there is effectively a new species has been created that's capable of multiplying itself at an instant. So we will have to learn how to interact with that species and develop our own skills in return.
That's really I want to interject. Well, I'm sort of there's so many great comments and questions, but I want to distill them a little bit and perhaps address some of them with one question, which is following on from what you just said. This has huge implications for education. So we should be educating for the future, not for the present. Now, in order to be able to do that, we need to be able to project and extrapolate, say, what is going to be, what roles are going to be taken over by AI in not just 5 or 10 years, 20 years, because children in school now, the young children, they're coming into the workforce in 20 years or 25 years' time, some of them. So that's a very difficult projection. But the key, or at least the key element, seems to be this thing: anything that can be duplicated by AI is something that it can learn, and in a very specific, repeatable, a very specific kind of repeatable field. So I would suggest that if we reorient education, and if for an adult, our own retraining if we need it, or our future development, to cultivating these intuitive skills and not focusing so much on the stuff that computers are already better than us at.
That's right.
What do you think that might look like?
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. I think humans ought to focus in education more on the creative, intuitive, emotional side, partly because of AI, but also partly because that's been ignored largely in the educational curricula up to today. I live in the Silicon Valley. I have 2 kids going to school. I see how much math and science homework and computerization they get, as opposed to the arts, which, if they are there at all, are a token. So definitely, I think education should be much more, emotional and artsy and creative than it is today.
Yeah, I think I watched that with concern, because I think it's a huge mistake for us to. We're effectively trying to compete with this brilliant genius, beyond genius mathematician that we've created. It's futile. I'm not saying we should not learn math, but we've really got to learn the other stuff that thing cannot do, if we want to remain relevant and fulfilled. So that's sort of addressing some of these questions here. That's a whole topic which we will be looking at in one of the future sessions. Resistance is futile. Thank you. Yes. And of course, coming from where I am, cultivating intuition itself through meditative practices, I think, is going to make us not just the people that practice it increasingly relevant and valuable, but the people that teach that practice, like me, and other teachers of meditative practices, increasingly valuable. And I'm seeing it already. And so it's, I actually have typically a very optimistic view of the future, where meditative practices are going to be understood to be actually enormously valuable.
I think they're already understood to be enormously valuable. It's just that most people can't bring it upon themselves to actually do it.
That's certainly true. But they're mostly understood to be valuable because they reduce stress. They reduce a pain point. The understanding of it as enhancing our abilities as intuitive, creative individuals is not very widely understood yet.
That's very true, yes.
For me, that's actually much more exciting. I mean, just not being stressed is not a thrilling life goal. Whereas being an intuitive genius, yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah.
I think we're probably supposed to wind down now, but this is really fun. I've just here's a homework task for people to, and we'll actually be able to continue this discussion using the Mighty Networks platform that we have, where we have this, ongoing comment field that any of you can now use as simply by virtue of enrolling in this event, where we can share a lot of these questions and continue the conversation. And one of the ones I would like to sort of put there, which we'll be doing, is just ask yourself, what about my career? Is it going to still exist in 5 or 10 years? What sort of reinvention might I need to do, or how am I going to develop what I'm already doing in this sort of more creative, intuitive direction, so that I, I'm not made irrelevant by some, in some ways really stupid, but in some ways super smart machine. That's for a lot of individuals in their very own lives. That's the very key practical issue, I think. Yeah. Well, I think we've got to wind down. I really appreciate you coming and joining us this morning. This is so cool. We talk about stuff like this whenever we meet, and spiritual stuff, of course. But I learn a lot every time I talk with you about this stuff. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. And thank you to everybody in the audience for joining either early on a Sunday or late on a Sunday, wherever you are. Thank you.
That's great. And these comments that you've added, a lot of you, I know we haven't had a chance to address them, or we've addressed them in part. I really want to, we might share a lot of these in the online ongoing conversation on our social network. It's our own little baby social network for the Planetary Leadership Training. So we get to play with that. Thank you so much, Patrick. I think I'm going to hand you all over to our host, to Krishna Prema.
Thank you, Dada. Thank you, Patrick. That was excellent. It was quite eye-opening for me and really informative. And I think, I think very relevant to the times we're in right now and answering a lot of questions. So thank you both very much for that presentation. And thank you everyone for your questions in the chat. And like Dada said, we will make sure that we try to answer more of those questions and continue the discussion in our Planetary Global Community platform. So we'll post the video of this workshop. And Dada, did you want to do the waterfall?
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
So we have.
Let me do that before we do the announcements. So.
Okay. So I'll explain the waterfall. So there's a lovely little, very simple exercise we've learned from someone else, where we can all share a very short sort of impression or takeaway, restricted to 5 words if you can. But what I want you to do is restrain yourselves. So think of what would you like to share with us in 5 words about what you've realized or understood or taken away or feel from today's session, and type it in the chat, but don't click the go button. Wait. And then when I tell you to, we all do it at the same time, and you get this cascade of comments, which is a waterfall of ideas, and I'll read them out as they all come, and it's really fun.
Dada, real quick, we have a raised hand.
Oh, raised hand? Tell us, what is the raised hand? Who is the raised hand?
I think it's Gowrie.
Gowrie, what's your question?
Or maybe she didn't mean to raise her
I
hand.
didn't mean to, sorry.
Okay, no problem. Okay.
All right, so
go on.
just to clarify, I want you to click on the chat, type your less than 5 words comment that's going to be part of this collective waterfall. Do not click on the share button for the comment until I tell you to, and then they'll all come at once, and we'll get to see them all and share them. All right? So I'll give you a minute to type your little comment. So click on the chat, and you can then make sure it's going to everyone. So sometimes the chat is just for a person. If you scroll to the top, it'll go to everyone. So you select everyone, and then you type your little comment there, and okay, and I'm going to type mine. So I'm just giving you a moment. Think about it, but don't share it yet. It might be just one word. I'll spoil it. I'll tell you mine. My word is actually relieved, because I've understood today that AI is not quite as dangerous or at least capable as I thought it might be, and I'm frankly relieved. So that's a good feeling for me. So whatever your feeling is, more of a feeling perhaps than necessarily than something cognitive or overly thinky. Is that a word? Thinky. I think it is. That's a new one. Okay, everybody ready to share? Well, just make sure you got your thing typed there, but don't share it until I say now. So we're going to count Share when I say 3. So 1, 2, and 3. You can click return. Oh my God. You're all good at following instructions, and we've got lots. So I'm going to just read these out, and that's then going to be our waterfall. So, relief, that was my one. Distribute powerful artificial help equitably. Oh, you really used your 5 words. We must adapt. The future is exciting, cautiously optimistic. I like that. The mystery unfolds and deepens. Nice. Interesting, challenging, eye-opener, future present. Yeah. AI will help spiritual humanity. Nice. Informed and somewhat comforted. Don't worry. I like that. Relief, illumination. Let's live our genius imaginations. Stimulating, thought-provoking. Knew more than I realized. Yeah, well, Karun, you were already a technology expert. Interesting, hopeful, optimistic, optimism about a bright future. A new feeling of hope. Love it. Computers are dumb. Phew. That's good. I think that's my favorite. Bliss and love. Humans always master of AI. Let's hope so. Intuition, meditation, most important to promote. Humanity. AI is a great automation tool now. The future is bright. Namaskar. And Vietnamese, I don't. We got the translation. Thank you. I want my mind to always be at peace before all the events of life. That is beautiful. Artificial intelligence. Thank you. That was from everyone. That was amazing. And I think that might be really nice stuff to share in our collective platform as well, because this is rich. Thank you all so much for creating the waterfall. Krishna Prema, your baby.
Okay, thank you, Dada. First of all, I want to say thank you for everyone being here. I want to thank our interpreters, Devesh and Subodh. I want to thank Dada again, and I want to thank Patrick, and I want to thank Jai for doing the tech part, and Ashita, because we're all volunteers here. So it's wonderful that we're all here together, and we appreciate all of you guys attending. I'm going to share my screen real quick because I do have a few announcements. So I hope you guys will bear with me. Let's get to the full screen. Okay, so every Sunday we will have a planetary workshop, and next Sunday, I'm really excited about announcing this. It's going to be called How Do We Obtain Knowledge with Jesus? And Jesus is fantastic. If any of you have ever gone to any of his workshops on critical thinking through Ruapak, thoughts that bite, they're fantastic. He's going to make your just kind of like this, where it's relevant, it makes you think, and his it's a real thought. I always leave with my mind a little, kind of hurting because I'm thinking so much and going deeper into our intuitive, like being what makes us human. So anyway, we hope that you will join us next Sunday, and same time, same place, same channel. And we'll have more information sent out soon and on our community platform. Also, like I said earlier, we do have lots of things going on. We have planetary meditation on Saturdays, and we have planetary yoga live sessions. We have Spanish and Portuguese on Monday. We have English and Portuguese on Wednesday. And we have English on Friday and Vietnamese on Friday. So we hope you guys can make it there. They're great live sessions, great instructors, and it's a good place to start or to continue your habit in asana yoga training. So, and everyone's welcome. And next thing. We also have started a PLT donations campaign. So I talked just quickly about that everyone that's here putting on these events are volunteers. And so we want to be able to one day to be able to offer something to our interpreters, to our host, and to continue to bring you guys valuable content. So please check out the link, I believe, is in the chat. And it's called Donor Box, and it's under Planetary Leadership Training. And we have you can read all about what our mission is, a little bit about PLT and where we're headed. And like I talked about earlier, the learning platform and all the things that we have for the future as we are trying to forge planetary leaders. So appreciate you guys taking the moment to look at that. And I believe that is the end of my stop share. We do have a poll to share to get a little feedback from everyone, just so that we can continue improving. And I believe I will share the poll.
Oh,
There we go.
We've got a question here I just want to address.
Yeah.
Asking about the next part of the AI series. So I'm really, I put this together in the last 3 days, and that was when I thought this deserves 4 sessions. So I don't have the dates, but I'm roughly thinking once a month, because otherwise I'll go crazy if it's more frequent. And so in a month's time, we'll have part 2, and the next 2 after that will be roughly once a month.
And we'll get the announcements out soon. We're building our calendar and hopefully have a month ahead of time of all the upcoming workshops. So you guys will kind of get a monthly calendar, so you can look forward to what's ahead. So
yeah.
So if we just take a moment to fill out the poll, that would be great.
Oh, and the poll's in 3 languages, great.
Yeah. Yeah, we're so grateful for having our interpreters here too. And I think on that note, just again, want to thank everyone for being here and wishing everybody a wonderful week. And we hope to see you in our community platform. And like Dada talked about, we'll continue the conversation there. And we will share the entire workshop. It will be on our YouTube channel and within our community platform, available for all of you guys to watch. And yeah, have a wonderful week, and we hope to see you at more of our events. Thank you.
Thanks, Timothy. It's just, thanks, Dada. You're not busy enough. Okay, great. Farewell, everybody. Thanks so much. See you all soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Namaskar.